"What are you doing in my mother's house?" I snapped as my husband stepped inside uninvited. Robert smirked, arrogance gleaming in his eyes. "No, it's ours now. This house is under my parents' name." "What?" I froze. "This is my mother's inheritance. How could it belong to them?" "Ownership transferred through a friend of mine, a court clerk," he said smugly, leaning closer. "Property of a wife belongs to her husband's family. Don't worry, you can stay, as a maid." I glared at him. Any love I once felt, consumed by fury. "Fine, but you'll regret this," I said, my voice icy with resolve. "Shut up, you idiot." He laughed cruelly and tossed a completed divorce application into my hands. "My name is Ember. I'm a 35-year-old part-time housewife. I don't have a father. He passed away when I was still young due to an accident. As a result, my mother raised me alone. She was a savvy businesswoman who built a large company on her own. I didn't want to make you suffer financially because we're a single-parent family. You have to live longer than your father, Ember," my mother often told me, working hard to ensure we were stable. Thanks to her, I never had any financial problems. I was nearby for work, so I came to see both you, sis, and Ember, my uncle said one day. "Oh, it's tough even though it's your day off," my mother replied. "Well, yeah. Oh, where's the heavy package you said you had trouble carrying the other day?" "I'll do that," he offered. My uncle helped me despite his busy schedule, so I didn't have much trouble. However, our family's lesson was to do things on our own and get what we want through effort. "Mom, can I work part-time? I want to buy something," I asked as a teenager. "Sure, what do you want?" she asked warmly. "The book I need to get the qualification I want," I said. "Oh, Ember, you're such a good girl," she replied with a smile. So I didn't spare any effort either. My mother always praised me for that. As a result, I am now in a position of responsibility at my current company. "I fell in love with you at first sight, and I was more attracted to you when I saw you working hard without sparing any effort," Robert had once said when we first met. "I met him at my company. He approached me aggressively, and I was drawn to his enthusiasm. We got married. We don't have any children, but we live a normal life. One day I stayed late at work because of a long meeting and got home late. You're finally back. I'm hungry, so make me food quickly," Robert said the moment I walked in, lounging on the sofa and playing with his smartphone. "I told you I'd be late today, so I told you to eat first, didn't I?" I reminded him, sighing. "Oh, did you?" he responded absent-mindedly. "I did contact you and you replied, 'I understood,'" I added. "Just make me food quickly," he said impatiently. He lay on the sofa as usual. Unlike me, he has no position. He is what you call a regular employee. I ask him to do housework, but he never does it. He leaves his clothes on the floor and doesn't even clean up the dishes he ate. At first, when we got married, he was considerate and helped with housework. Now, it's a different story. "You know, I just got home from work and I'm tired. You have the luxury of lying on the sofa while I'm exhausted, so prepare your own food," I snapped. "You're annoyed because you're infertile," he shot back cruelly. I was enraged by his words. It's true that we don't have children, but it's not just my fault. We both have bodies that make it difficult to conceive. That's the same for you. It's your fault. You can't have children because your body is defective, I retorted. "What did you say? Are you making fun of me?" he yelled angrily. That day we had a fight. Robert, sulking, ended up sleeping in the bedroom without eating anything. I held my head in my hands. After all the hard work I'd put in until now, I just couldn't understand his behavior. What was I supposed to do? As I warmed up the prepared food, I muttered to myself. The next morning, I woke up later than usual because it was a rare holiday with nothing to do. "Robert, he's not here," I said to myself, noting his absence. My husband, who usually slept until noon, was nowhere to be seen. He must have gone to his parents' house, I thought. I got ready and headed to the hospital. "Mom, I'm here," I greeted warmly. "Oh, Ember, are you off today?" she asked, smiling weakly. "Yes. How are you feeling?" I inquired. "I feel the same as always," she replied, looking tired. My mother had collapsed at work the other day and was currently hospitalized. Even now she was working from her hospital bed despite her poor physical condition. "How about you? Are you okay?" she asked me, concerned. I returned her worried look with a smile. I couldn't afford to cause her more mental stress. More importantly, the treat in front of the company was beautiful again this year. Do you want to see the photo I took? I said, changing the subject. Yes, I want to see it, she said eagerly. After chatting happily with her, I left the hospital for a while. Suddenly, my phone buzzed. Ugh, it's from my mother-in-law, I groaned. When I looked at the notification, I saw a message from her. Reluctantly, I answered the phone. Hey, what have you been doing all this time? She barked. I went to see my mother, I explained. What? You're putting your husband aside and prioritizing your parents, she shouted, her shrill voice making me wince. Robert must have gone to his parents' house, and now his mother wouldn't stop complaining. Really, he's old enough to handle things on his own without his mother always interfering. Thinking that, I hung up the phone and let it go. What's wrong, Ember? You look really unhappy, my uncle said, noticing my expression. Oh, Uncle, are you here to visit Mom too? I asked, surprised, running into him near the hospital. Yeah, that's right, he replied. There was a man standing behind him. Uncle, is that person a coworker? I asked, curious. Yeah, that's right. I'll introduce him because he might be related to you in the future, my uncle replied. I'm Max. Nice to meet you, the man said, handing me his business card. I returned the gesture, giving him mine. Then, my uncle said, I have something to talk to my niece about, so go to the hospital first, urging Max to leave. So, who was that phone call? My uncle asked. Oh, it was my mother-in-law, I explained with a wry smile. Robert, who often runs away to his parents' house when we fight, and my mother-in-law, who calls me infertile while protecting Robert, have always been a source of stress. My uncle listened to my story, let out a heavy sigh, and said, Please don't tell your mother about this. I don't want her to worry. I understand, I replied. My uncle nodded with a subtle expression. I thanked him and parted ways with him. Not long after that conversation, I received the call that shook my world. Really? My mother. I gasped in disbelief, clutching the phone. The news hit me like a thunderbolt. My mother's condition had suddenly worsened, and she had passed away before I could even reach the hospital. I was paralyzed with shock, unable to process the sudden and permanent separation. My uncle, despite his own grief, stood by me with unwavering strength and took charge of arranging the funeral. At the funeral, I overheard an insensitive conversation. All right, Robert whispered to his parents. The inheritance is ours now. That's right, his mother replied. She's the president of a large corporation, isn't she? I wonder how much inheritance there is. The inheritance of a wife belongs to the husband's family. We can say goodbye to that shabby house, she concluded smugly. Their laughter brought me back to my senses. Enraged, I shouted, Get out! I couldn't believe what they were saying, and my uncle chased them out for me. Robert and his family tried to resist, but realized they were being stared at by others, and left the funeral hall while cursing at my uncle. Ember, my uncle said softly. If you want to cut ties with them, let me know anytime. Okay, thank you, I replied, grateful for his support. After that, I couldn't bring myself to return to Robert's house. I decided to live temporarily in the mansion that was my mother's inheritance. This house held countless memories. I planted flowers in the garden to soothe my busy mother, and we used to play hide and seek on holidays in this spacious mansion. Even though she had a demanding job, my mother always made time for me. Spending time in the mansion brought back those cherished memories. When I'm gone, you can do whatever you want with this house, my mother had once said. When I thought about those words, the doorbell suddenly rang. Thinking it might be my uncle, I opened the door. You were here after all, Robert exclaimed, standing in the doorway. Robert? What are you doing in my mother's house? I snapped as he stepped inside without invitation. Robert smirked. No, it's ours now. The name of this house is in my parents' name. What? My mind went blank. Your parents? This is my mother's inheritance. Why would it be in their name? I had the ownership transferred by a friend of mine, who's a judicial scrivener, Robert said smugly. What are you doing? That's unbelievably selfish, I shouted. Shut up. A wife's property belongs to her husband's family, he replied coldly. Then, with a smug tone, he added, Oh, don't worry. I'll let you stay here as a housekeeper. Give the house to my parents. If you go against it, it's a divorce, he demanded insistently. Staring at him in disbelief, I realized my love for him had completely vanished. Instead, I felt anger. Okay, but you'll regret it, I said calmly. Shut up, idiot. He laughed, handing me a completed divorce form. If he was serious, I would show him I was too. I smiled and left the house with the divorce form. When I reached my uncle's house, I explained everything. What? My uncle exclaimed. They're quite presumptuous. I consulted him, knowing he was a lawyer. Changing the name without permission is illegal and shouldn't be possible, he explained. Nevertheless, a judicial scrivener acquaintance allowed this, I retorted. Don't worry, I'll protect my sister's house. And of course you too, Ember, my uncle assured me. The next day, my uncle and I went to the mansion, now occupied by Robert and his parents. Where were you yesterday? Robert sneered. The housekeeper can't leave? Housekeeper? Who are you talking about? I asked. Who else? It's you, he uttered confidently. I'm already divorced, I shot back. Robert's smug expression vanished. What? He stammered. My uncle stepped forward, his voice cold. As a lawyer, I have something to tell you. Changing the name of this property without permission is illegal. We'll be pursuing this matter. Robert's parents came out, clearly alarmed by the commotion. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law asked, then added, A judicial scrivener I know followed the proper procedures. Who is that? My uncle countered. This is a complete forgery of private documents. Robert, still glaring at me, blurted, You don't do anything stupid. I smirked. Who did something stupid first? At least I didn't do anything illegal. Robert was speechless. His mother, pale and trembling, stammered, Get out of this mansion right now, and be prepared. My uncle, determined, said, We're not letting them get away with trampling on your mother's memory, Ember. It turned out my mother had anticipated this situation. She had left a will ensuring the inheritance was safe. It says here, my uncle read aloud, that all the inheritance is entrusted to Ember, including full ownership of the mansion. Robert, desperate, begged me, Please, I've already sold my house and my parents' house. What? I exclaimed. Why would you do something so reckless? Robert confessed he'd been gambling and had sold both houses to pay off his debt. You're still my wife, right? He pleaded. No, I said firmly. I'm not your wife anymore. You have two options. Face the police for forgery or buy the mansion for $3 million. Robert, stunned, realized he had no options. Seeing him like that, I decided to file a complaint with the police. Moreover, when I drove my in-laws out and looked inside the mansion, there were some things missing. My mother's keepsake is missing. What could this mean? I angrily asked my ex-husband. It wasn't me. Mother said to sell anything she didn't like. He hurried to justify himself. Apparently my in-laws sold it without permission. Another lawsuit to add to the list. In the end, Robert and they were left with a huge debt. Of course, he was also fired from the company. I am now the president of the company, which was passed down to me by my mother. Get that stupid wife out of here. In such a situation, my father-in-law, who was left alone, stormed into the company. He caused a scene, demanding that we withdraw the complaint and give him money, so he ended up being taken care of by the police as well. My uncle laughed bitterly, remarking that they were an irredeemable family. It seems like we found out who that lawyer is, my uncle said. The lawyer in question was Robert's cousin. My uncle forced him to confess by portraying him as a villain and exploiting his weakness, which compelled him to cooperate. Then, he cut off my ex-husband's cousin's path to becoming a lawyer by reporting him to the authorities. He resented the in-laws for this incident and blamed the entire family, saying things like, I was deceived, and they're demons. Their family is like a dangerous one, my uncle commented. Yeah, it seems so, I agreed. Well, they can pull each other down as much as they want. I had no feelings about it. So, have you decided what to do with that mansion? My uncle asked. Yeah, I decided to sell it, I replied. Certainly that mansion was filled with memories of my mother. However, it was tainted by my in-laws. Besides, it was too big for me to live in alone. If you've decided that, then it's up to you. I'm on your side, my uncle assured me. With those words, he supported my decision. And so, I sold the mansion. Fortunately, a wealthy person who wanted to spend the rest of their life there bought it early. I said goodbye to my mother's memories and left the mansion. From now on, I will live alone in an apartment near the company. Ember, Max called out. Oh, Max, I responded. I came here after asking my senior, he said, approaching me as I left the company. He helped me with various things, such as investigating Robert's family and collecting evidence. Gradually, our distance narrowed, and we started calling each other by name, influenced by my uncle. Can I have some of your time? Max asked hesitantly. Sure, no problem, I said. So we went to a cafe near the company. Thank you for everything, including my mother's case, I said. No, I wanted to help Ember, Max replied, looking at me seriously. I was surprised but looked back at him. I like you, Ember, he confessed. What? I blurted out, completely caught off guard, my mind racing to process his sudden admission. I know it might not be the right time since you just finished things with Robert, but please think about it when you're ready, he said, handing me his contact information. I was aware of his feelings. However, until now, I couldn't see him that way. I'm serious, he added. I felt that he was lovely as he blushed and said that maybe it would be good to get married again. That's what I thought. After a while, my in-laws apparently broke into that mansion to try to get it back. Maybe they thought I was still there. However, it was already owned by a wealthy person. That wealthy person had prepared various securities, so Robert and his family were immediately arrested. They already had a criminal record, so they received a prison sentence. Please, Ember, help me, Robert begged over the phone. I forgot to block his contact, and Robert contacted me like that. He was really stupid. Apparently only my in-laws broke in, and Robert was spared because he was asking for help everywhere. However, Robert still had a debt that was too heavy for him to bear alone. Can't you learn already? I'm not going to help you, I said firmly. Wait, we were married once, he pleaded. Really? I'm amazed at my own lack of judgment about this, I replied sharply. I realized that I shouldn't give in to you. I have to be more careful from now on. Well, it doesn't seem like I have to worry about that. Is that all you wanted to talk about? I asked irritably. Ember, one more time with me, he pleaded again. I refuse. Goodbye, I said and hung up. This time I blocked his contact so I wouldn't forget. Is the call over? Max asked. Yes, it's over, I replied. After that, I decided to accept Max's kindness. We are now engaged. My uncle pushed me saying, this guy is serious. Hey Max, I have a hard time getting pregnant, and I'm getting old, I admitted. As long as I have you, I'm fine. Besides, having children isn't the only way to have a family, he reassured me. I thought that I could build a happy family with him. After that, I talked to my uncle about Robert, Max, and the child. I see. If you've decided that, that's fine, my uncle said. I've been thinking about it for a while, but why are you such a good ally to me, uncle? I inquired. Oh, that's a promise I made to your father, he explained. Your father and I were best friends. He asked me to look after you and your mother if anything ever happened to him. He said, please always be on her side. I see, I said, touched. And to me, you're like a daughter, my uncle added with a smile. I smiled at my uncle, who laughed and said that he was on my side. I'm really glad he's on my side. Be happy, he said. Yes, of course, I promised him. After that, I married Max. We enjoyed living together for a while and chose to adopt a child. This is my grandchild, my uncle said proudly. My uncle also loves the child. I pour a lot of love into him, just like my mother did for me. It's our child, so it'll be okay no matter what, I said. Yes, that's right, Max agreed. There may be many trials ahead of us. However, we can overcome them. I will teach the lessons my mother taught me, be an ally like my uncle, and deliver honest feelings to my child, like Max. I swore to do so.